Owls are mysterious, magical, and often misunderstood creatures. In cities across India, they are seen as everything, from wise omens to harbingers of doom. But what do these beliefs mean for the real owls navigating our concrete jungles? To answer this and much more, we have with us Debangini Ray. She's an ecologist and a doctoral student at the Chatur Ullu Lab, MIT World Peace University, Pune, whose work bridges ecology, culture, and urban life. Through her Urban Owl project, she explores how cultural beliefs about owls shape their survivals in cities that we live in. She has been collecting stories for quite some time now to raise awareness among urban communities. Passionate about community driven conservation, Devangini is committed to building long term collaborative frameworks for urban wildlife rescue and research. She also contributes to marine conservation and public engagement through her work with Dakshin Foundation in Bengaluru. Over to you, Devangini. Good to have you.
Thank you so much, Ananya, for this lovely introduction. It's always a pleasure to chat about owls, and I'm really fortunate to have this opportunity to connect to more people. Uh, I have prepared a very simple, short presentation, and I have a few notes that I would love to share with the people who are here watching us. I would just like to begin by saying that owls are actually pretty rare birds. They are not our usual sparrows, crows, and miners that we see around us every day. I mean, if we are gardening or we're sitting in the balcony, they are not going to come to us perched and sing a melodious tune, right? So that sort of adds to the mystery of owls. And today I'll try to divide my talk between cultural perceptions that we have as citizens towards these birds, and also how it's tied to the current struggles or the threats that owls face in cities. So I think for the next 2 minutes at least, I would love to remind ourselves and all our viewers of how fascinating, quirky, weird, all in a good way owls are. So I would just like to show you 8 distinguished gentlemen out of 254 species. These are just 8 species of owls, and each with their own quirks. So the first one is a Vero eagle owl, and the pink eyeshadow is a very natural one. It's a natural makeup it has, and it's the largest owl in Africa. Second is a long whiskered owl. It's very recently discovered in Peru. Looks like it's just woken up and hasn't smelled coffee. And the third one is a Stygian owl. For some reason, people love to talk about this owl in newspapers and the media because apparently the owl's eyes turn red, which is, of course, not true. The funny thing about this owl is that it woofs just like a dog, and that's its call. The fourth one, which is judging us left, right, and center, is a puffy fish owl. It loves to sort of bathe in the rivers where it also catches fish, and it sunbathes after that. Very uncharacteristic of normal owls. Then we have this one is a real owl. It's not a plush toy. It's a spot-bellied eagle owl. It's a juvenile, and a lot of people, even in India, they're very scared of this owl because they tell me that the call resembles that of a wailing woman. Then we have a lot of these quirky owls. One is wearing woolly socks. It's not actually, it's real again. It's a spectacled owl. Then we have a brown hawk owl, very close to home in India. And another fun fact about this owl is that a lot of people believe it can turn itself invisible. It's mostly because you can hear this owl more than you can actually see it. And last of all, we have this wonderful species of crested owl, which looks like it's ready to go to a Coachella concert. And this is just to hook you to the very quirky, different, varied, crazy looking species of owls there are in the world. And in India, we have 36 species of owls. So going on to the first segment of the talk, where I try to talk about the cultural lives, to understand the cultural lives and perceptions of owls that we have towards owls, we need to sort of go back a little bit more in time. Owls first arrived on this planet 60 to 65 million years ago. And comparatively, humans arrived 0.2 million years ago. So you see, owls are actually our super seniors when it comes to sharing, the planet. They have evolved thousands of years before we have, and we in fact have evolved in their presence, right? Uh, so interestingly, if you see the first image, it's an engraving of an owl in Chauvet Cave in southern France. It's been discovered in 1994, not too long ago, and this is regarded as the oldest depiction of an owl by a human being, by humans. So as old as 30,000 years old. So 30,000 years ago, we've started this relationship or dynamics with owls, and since then we have somehow managed to integrate owls in our religion and culture. So the next image is that of goddess Ishtar. Ishtar is regarded as one of the very first goddesses. This was worshipped for 4,000 years back in Mesopotamia, and a lot of other goddesses in the world, in different cultures around, are said to have evolved from goddess Ishtar, who's also known by different names like Ereshkigal and Lilith and all of that. So if you notice goddess Ishtar here, she has the feet of an owl, which is also flanked by two owls on either side. So it's the first of its kind, first sort of owl goddess, you can say. And then, of course, we've goddess Athena. A lot of you might be familiar with goddess Athena from Greek mythology. Maybe she was regarded as the goddess of wisdom and war, and she's always flanked with a little owl on her side. And by little, I don't just mean the size of the owl. I also mean the species is called little owl. And so from then onwards, owls have sort of being seen synonymous with wisdom, and that continued even in Roman civilization. Goddess Athena became goddess Minerva, and she was still flanked by a little owl. The difference was that this time owls in Roman civilization were not seen with the same level of warmth and kindness, but they were seen as evil. And then, of course, we have goddess Lakshmi, our very own goddess Lakshmi, who's always flanked by a white owl, which is the barn owl, on her side, which is why in a lot of Indian states, barn owls are seen sort of synonymous with wealth. So basically, it's thought as if like अगर ये घर पे आ जाते तो पैसा आ जाएगा बहुत. So it's like wealth. It's inviting Lakshmi to your house. And unfortunately, though, uh, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, as we'll discover later, we have integrated owls in everything from our wildest imagination to a culture, religion, mythology, history, literature, poems, stories. Everywhere you see there's a mention, and it doesn't matter whether you're in India or in whichever country around the globe. There is a global obsession with owls in the human imagination. The first image here is this is an owl craft made by my friend, and this is one of the millions of anecdotes and artifacts that I have come across in my life about owls and on owls, whether it's jewelry, showpieces, home decor, brand names, f- patterns, designs, paintings. Owls are everywhere. You just have to look. The second image here is it's a painting by a very famous Dutch Renaissance painter named Hieronymus Bosch. The interesting thing about Hieronymus Bosch and his paintings was that he also was very obsessed with owls. So in all his paintings, you could see an owl, maybe not as big as this, but there's always an owl peeking from somewhere in his paintings. And they all had symbolic meanings. Then, of course, you have Pablo Picasso, who was a very famous artist in his time. He happened to rescue a little owl, again, the species little owl, and he named it Ubu. Ubu and Picasso became obsessed with each other. They became best friends, and eventually, Picasso started imagining and thinking of himself as more owl-like than a human being. He described his characteristics and his nature to resemble that of an owl. So if you see a lot of Picasso's sculptures and his paintings have owl motifs in them. Below that, we have Florence Nightingale, who's also known as the founder of modern nursing. Florence Nightingale also rescued this little owl, and she named it, ironically, she named it Athena. Athena and Florence Nightingale became best of friends. She took the owl wherever she went. When the owl finally died, she made sure to embalm the owl. And now, if you visit Florence Nightingale Museum in London, you will see the embalmed little owl, Athena, who was once upon a time the best friend of Florence Nightingale. And then, if you see this picture, it's a bride and groom newly married with a barn owl. Now, the fascination of owls, thanks to Harry Potter more than ever, really grew. Suddenly we had this immense demand for owls as pets. And this continues till date, where you actually have services in UK that hire and train owls to guard properties and to
All right, we seem to be having some technical issue connecting with Devangini. We'll try to reconnect again. For those of you who are here, we are talking about owls, about how mysterious they are, and how, of course, magical they are, but also, especially like for us who are staying in the urban areas of India and across the world, how misunderstood they are. Just a while back, Devangini was saying how owls were first seen or first came to this earth that we know as it is back about 60 to 65 million years ago. Now when we start to compare that with India, with the humans rather, we were here about zero point 0.5 million years ago. Now 65 million years ago to zero point 0.5 million years ago, that in itself tells us how humans in general have in a way evolved around them. They are not the ones evolving around us. So even though there is so much of misunderstanding when it comes to humans understanding them, the owls, it's very interesting to understand how these creatures are and how they're adapting to our globalization, to our concrete jungle, and to us as humans. I see Devangini. Can you hear me?
Hi, Ananya. Sorry, I had a power cut. Just give me a
That's good.
moment. I'm
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah.
Is
All right.
is fine? Okay. So, okay, amazing. I was saying that in the UK, there's a service now that trains and hires owls, mostly barn owls, to take the rings, to fly and take the rings to the bride and groom during weddings. And this is crazy because it leads to, I mean, more than ever, there are hilarious accidents that happen because of this. It's not the wisest thing to do, but it just goes on to show how obsessed we are with owls. And here there is a vessel, you see, an artifact. This is displayed, was found displayed in the Louvre in France, and it shows Athena transformed completely into an owl carrying a spear. This is one of the millions of artifacts that have been unearthed across different time periods and civilizations across the world, which has owl motifs and owl decor in them. To answer why are humans so obsessed with owls, I think one of the main reasons is that owls, unlike other birds, have forward-facing eyes. So other birds have eyes on either side of their heads. Owls have front-facing eyes, which sort of reminds ourselves of us. Basically, they resemble humans. So, being the anthropocentric beings that we are, being obsessed with ourselves, we just love the fact and we empathize more with owls because they resemble us. And that's why we have also, it's a popular, most of the researchers believe that we also attach this wisdom to owls because they look so much like humans. um, Going on, moving on, and coming closer home to India, out of 36 species, two species that are quite widespread, and you'll find them even around human habitations. And a lot of you might be familiar with these two owl species. One is a barn owl, another is a spotted owlet. I would love to read what one of the most legendary ornithologists, Salim Ali, has written about them because he had a very unique style style of describing birds and their behavior. And this is very accurate. So Salim Ali describes a barn owl as a typical owl, golden buff, gray above, finely stippled with black and white, silky white, tinged with buff and normally spotted dark brown. It has a large round head with a conspicuous ruff of stiff feathers surrounding a comically pinched white monkey-like facial disc. And this is unbelievably correct, right? A lot of people say that barn owls have heart-shaped faces, but sometimes they look like they are like just pinched somehow, like a and made flat. Inseparable from the haunts of man, emerges after dark with a wheezy screech. The call is a mixture of harsh, discordant screams and weird snoring and hissing notes. I would like to request everybody who's reading this to remember this information because it's going to come up later. Salim Ali also describes a spotted owlet as they fly out fussily when suspicious of being observed and bob and stare at the intruder from a distance in clownish fashion. A large variety of harsh chattering, squabbling, and chuckling notes, two individuals frequently combining in a discordant duet, both sexes share all domestic duties. This is one thing a lot of people who might have interacted with or observed spotted owlets will notice, that they bob their heads up and down a lot, and sometimes it looks really comical. And the reason they do this is because owls' eyes are fixed in their sockets. They can't roll their eyes or sort of turn their eyeballs around or eyes around like we can, which is why they can rotate their heads for up to 270 degrees. And the reason they bob their heads up and down is to calculate the distance at which, the person or the thing, the object in front of them is. They have to sort of judge whether it's a threat to them or not. And yeah, this is one of the most prominent behaviors of a spotted owlet, which makes them very funny and likable to a lot of humans. Now, unfortunately, all these different quirks and characteristics of owls do make them very interesting subjects and interesting birds. But that doesn't mean that all of us have positive perceptions towards them in our country. So, unfortunately, there is a very big mixture of negative, neutral, and positive perceptions towards owls, and it depends on a variety of factors, on not just on the species but also on geographical factors, where you're from, culture, which culture you're from, maybe your educational background, or maybe a mixture of all of this and different age groups, right? So barn owls can be considered cultural icons because there's just so many perceptions attached to barn owls. The most prominent of it being that they are vahanas of goddess Lakshmi. As I said, vahanas are sort of vehicles. Basically, it's your companion, or you're flanked by a barn owl. And if you see goddess Lakshmi, there's always an owl by her side, which leads to a lot of people thinking that barn owls are lucky. Lucky as in they're lucky for inviting wealth into your homes. And while a lot of people focus on their white color more than anything else, very interestingly, and related to sort of they organize pujas and sort of worship this owl, especially during Diwali, so that basically their wealth can increase tenfold. Now, this might sound like a very positive and attitude or whatever, but unfortunately, because of this very reason, barn owls are also illegally trafficked. They are illegally caught and trafficked in and around the country just before Diwali, during Diwali, for black magic rituals and sacrifices. And this practice is rooted in a very tragic superstition that if you catch a barn owl, if you sacrifice a barn owl, then basically you are forcing Lakshmi to never leave your home, which means that your wealth will stay with you forever. And while this sounds unbelievable because it's really difficult to believe that people would believe something like this, it's actually going on. And every year, this is the reason why we also have special task forces in quite a few cities and states in India just before Diwali. And every year, we also catch quite a few people who are trying to sell these, not just a barn owl, but also other species of owls. And well, As I said, this obsession with color is also there. It's something that has come up recurrently in my research. The more people I talk to, the more I realize that the barn owl is described more by its white color than its shape or size or call or any other characteristic for that matter. And that white is a very positive connotation, as in barn owls are positively correlated with the color white. And that interestingly tells a lot about us as people, to be honest. And it's also used as to demarcate, basically distinguish this owl from all other owls which are not white in color. So while a lot of people regard them as angels and goddess Lakshmi and all of this, because of this reason, they also sacrificed. Another thing I've noticed in a lot of cities is that again, barn owls live very close to human habitation. So they might prefer to roost or nest in your cantilever and AC ducts and chimney places, wherever they find a cozy sort of nook to roost or nest. The problem here is coupled with all the negative perceptions and the harsh screech calls of barn owls, along with something that they do where they expel pellets. Now, expelling a pellet is an act that owls do because they swallow their prey whole. Because they swallow their prey whole, there are these indigestible parts like bones and fur and all of that that they don't really require. So what they do is, what they gizzard, what their system does is it sort of wraps everything up in a pellet, as you can see here, and they expel it via their mouth. And that's something that you always find. It's the sure shot evidence that there are barn owls. I mean, there are any owls around, depending on the size and shape of the pellet. So, because of these pellets, which may be a little smelly, coupled with the harsh calls of barn owls and the overall generic disregard and negative perceptions towards them, people have started closing in all chimneys, AC ducts, and all possible ways in which barn owls can actually come close and nest or roost near human habitations, which is kind of becoming a big cause of concern. Um, and another last thing I would also like to add here is that we are very obsessed with the idea of vegetarianism in India. So a lot of birds, most birds are frugivorous, or they feed on fruits, they feed on insects and all of that. Now barn owls will bring live prey, or feed on rodents and all of that. And you can clearly see bones and flesh and fur and all of that in the pellets. Now this idea scares people off, it disgusts people, because I mean, even as humans, it's very difficult for us to find a place for rent if we are non-vegetarians. So imagine what it must do to owls. So it's something that sort of adds to the negative perception. Coming to small and medium sized owls, because there's quite a few of them clubbed under this. There's Asian barred owlet, spotted owlet, there's a brown hawk owl, different species of scops owls. These are all small to medium sized owls, and they are brownish in color, brownish, blackish, as all owls are. They're well camouflaged. And again, just as a barn owl is positively correlated with the color white, these owls are negatively correlated for their color, which is described as black or dark. And while in English it sounds half decent, it sounds way worse in local languages, because we use this to sort of demean or have negative connotations. Like we say kawa, but let's say if we emphasize on how evil a crow is, we say kala kawa, right? So it's the same with these owls. A lot of emphasis is placed on their dark color and how evil they are, as if that's the reason they're evil. And their calls also don't help, because humans, I think, psychological thing, you relate birds with melodious calls. So it's very difficult for people to accept that owls have such strange, sometimes eerie calls. For people like us, it's fascinating because the vocal range is immense. There are barks and sneezes, wheezes, and like weird range of calls. But when you hear them at night, for people who are not used to hearing them, it can be quite scary. Unfortunately, there are again a lot of beliefs regarding these owls. For example, the small owls which call out at night and you can't really see them, they are believed to be bad omens. Like in Guwahati, it's believed that if these owls call out, then somebody is going to die in that neighborhood in the next 48 hours. And this is in the city. There are people who have spoken to who are well educated, and they are well aware of what is a superstition and what is a logical thing. They are the ones who have told me, try to convince me that, listen, I don't care. This actually is a true thing. We have seen it happen. So what they do is they pelt stones to shoo away the owls. Even if they can't see them, they just pelt stones the direction the sound's coming from. Uh, and if, God forbid, an owl happens to enter the premises, they will sprinkle Ganga Jal, they will call a priest, basically, the whole how you conduct an exorcism. It's very similar to that. So this is how bad it is. And going to big sized owls, and those horns are just to make you to show you that how easily people can mistake these ear tufts for horns, right? So big owls like Eurasian eagle owls, Indian eagle owls, fish owls, there are so many different owls who are big in size, and they have these ear tufts, which are not even ears. They're called plumicorns, which is Latin for feathered tufts. These are just for camouflage. But if you see an owl, a big one at that, and you see the ear tufts, they resemble the horns and it's much easier to associate them with the devil now, more than ever, right? And that's exactly what happens. These big owls with their silhouettes in the dark, um, looking all mysterious with their very bright orange eyes or yellow eyes, and with the ear tufts, we start associating them with horror, supernatural, haunted house, and of course horror movies don't help, right? So imagine going to a cemetery, especially cemeteries and graveyards, where people complain that it's really spooky, and of course you will find more owls there, and there's a logical reason behind that. They are not messengers from Patal Lok. They go there. It's a very good habitat for them because it's undisturbed. There is less human activity. It is dark. There are old growth trees there, and most importantly, there is grass and weed. It's a perfect habitat for their prey, the rodents. And this is the reason you find a lot of owls in undisturbed, forgotten, sort of abandoned areas like graveyards, cemeteries, old parks, and all of that, right? And unfortunately, here also their calls don't really help their cause, because the spot-bellied eagle owl, for example, the call is described as that of a churel. It's People say that, okay, this the call is so spooky, it sounds like a churel, as if you've heard a churel in real life. Then it's described as a wailing woman, as a woman being strangled. And while I'm not sure which is creepier, these descriptions or the actual call, but this basically has led to people naming this bird in different local languages, which directly translates to devil bird or ghost bird, and stuff like that. Then you have the mottled eagle owl, which is a beautiful owl, but its call is like a cackling laughter, which is why it's called Raktalochan in Maharashtra, and it's associated with witches and witchcraft. So basically, they are seen as messengers of witches. And in Kerala, they are called Kalam Kori, and Kalam is god of death Yama, and Kori is basically a fowl. So it literally translates to fowl of death. Now, just in case these superstitions and beliefs start, like you start believing them or start finding logic in them, let me just bust the myth right here and remind you that these owls are specialists, as in you won't find them easily in the city as you might find spotted owlets or barn owls. Specialists meaning that they have a specific kind of diet and a specific preference for habitat, which is why you'll find them mostly in old growth forests and sacred groves, and forests which are near streams and rivers, which is why they make for excellent indicators for biodiversity and even the religious value of a forest. um, Now, uh, okay, so all these cultural perceptions, and you might have guessed that they don't really it's not a very rosy picture right now for owls in a city, with all these perceptions that we, the people primary dwellers, the primary species, let's say, because we are the ones who dominate cityscapes and urbanscapes. And if we have these kind of perception towards owls, let's say it's not a very happy picture for these owls. But to throw more light on this, I would like to show you three images. And if anybody does get triggered by this kind of thing, I would request you to please look away for 2 minutes. They're just three images of owls which are killed by vehicles. The first one is a spotted owlet in Pune. Uh, this one is a brown hawk owl. Sorry, it's a brown fish owl in the outskirts of Panjim in Goa. And this one here, bottom left, is a barn owl outside Guwahati. And all of these are more or less near national highways. And these are not rare cases. These are just three of the hundreds of cases that rescue organizations and forest department all across the country get on a daily basis or a monthly basis. And more importantly, I think it's not just owls. It's so many other birds, it's reptiles who end up being roadkill. Owls, now you might question, owls can fly. How don't they have this sense of avoiding vehicular traffic, right? There are a lot of factors, but more importantly, I'd just like to draw your attention to the hunting behavior that a lot of owls have. They fly very close to the ground when they hunt. And owls get easily stressed by stressors like light, sound, because they rely almost entirely on their hearing and their eyesight to hunt. Now, we have a lot of these LED lights nowadays, which have replaced the previous lights that trucks and cars used to have. And also, the sides of these highways are stippled with a lot of these. Sort of grasses and everything that's a very good habitat for their prey, the rodents. So you'll find a lot of these accidents, not even roadkill, because roadkill there is no chance. In vehicular collisions there is no chance of owls surviving. They end up being roadkill. So it's not just vehicular collisions though. They also collide against glass architecture, reflective buildings, and just like a lot of other birds. But with owls at night, it's particularly difficult. And even if they don't die, what happens is they go into neurogenic shock. They suffer severe trauma. If not that, they'll also end up injuring their wings or their legs and talons, and in more often than not, they're unable to go back to the wild even after treatment. Here are some of the threats apart from collisions. We have quite a bit. Just briefly touch upon all of them. Habitat destruction is something that I think we're all familiar with, and it's happening more than ever now. A lot of owls, small owls, actually do roost and nest in trees, especially trees that have nooks and crevices in them, like small holes in them. And a lot of dead trees also, which provides a lot of hollow openings for owls to nest. What we do is, of course, we end up cutting all the branches and dead trees, obviously. We also end up concretizing a lot of we end up concretizing the space around trees. So ultimately, habitat destruction is a huge cause of concern, and not just to owls, but also to other wildlife. Now, if owls are already compromised and they are on the ground, unable to fly, let's say they are dehydrated or they are in shock, they're more prone to animal attacks like stray dogs, stray cats. Now, as I said, owls are very sensitive to stressors. Now, if something like this happens and that's coupled with an animal attack, it's almost impossible for that owl to survive, even with human intervention. Now, nest displacement, owls don't build their own nests. They use nests that have been abandoned by other birds. But, nest displacement basically means that the chicks fall out of the nest, fall out of the place they are being reared or raised, and then they're unable to go back up. Or their parents are, let's say, killed and they're orphaned. So again, in this situation, it's very difficult unless reported or human intervention happens for these chicks to survive. Chinese manja is one of the biggest threats to owls today. And out of all the rescue data that I am getting from different cities, it is unbelievable to see how dangerous Chinese manja is. I mean, humans are also killed by Chinese manja, right? Every year. And Chinese manjas, a lot of you might know, they're coated with glass shards and extremely dangerous. So what happens is we fly these kites and we leave the manja lying about, and that becomes extremely dangerous. And there are so many owls which have their wings cut off or their legs cut off, talons cut off, or other severe injuries because of Chinese manja. Noise pollution and electrocution might seem like quite generic threats, but let me assure you they are not. A lot of owls are dying by electrocution more so nowadays, and we really need more research to understand why. It's not just the small owlets like spotted owlets. Even big owls like Indian eagle owls are dying by electrocution in different parts of India. Noise pollution, especially, it's very harmful for birds like owls who rely almost entirely on their hearing to hunt, especially at night and during festivals when noise pollution it goes at an like all-time high. And it's not just traffic horns; it's just loudspeakers playing songs, and that's also it really impacts owls negatively. Then glue traps and other traps are basically used to catch rodents, catch rats. Unfortunately, what it also does is attract predators to these rats, which are mostly owls and snakes. What happens then, of course, is the owls and the snakes also get trapped in these traps. Um, secondary poisoning is basically the rodenticides that we use, the rat kill and all of that, to kill rats. Why it's so dangerous is that we used to have first generation anticoagulant rodenticides during the Industrial Revolution, which basically the intention was to kill rodents in large numbers. Rodents sort of developed a resistance to these, and then humans came up with second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, which are 1,000 times more toxic. And it's so scary. Any rat, let's say, which has consumed this, can still move around and live up to 2 weeks, which basically means that any predator which preys on these rodents, which are poisoned, they also face this toxin buildup. It compromises their immune system. Bottom line is they die a very slow and painful death. Um, and almost all the owls, the barn owls that are rescued in different cities in India today, have been reported to have a compromised immune system by the wildlife veterinarians that I have spoken to. And that is a huge cause of concern. Alien is artificial light at night, which we term as alien, is it's a big threat to not just birds but also insects. For owls, especially, again, I would like to draw your attention again to this fact that lights are not just street lights. Nowadays, you have these big hoardings, big billboards which have LED lights. For humans, it's annoying. So imagine what it must do to owls. There's a change in architectural design, as in we had the traditional houses before which had these roofs where there were a lot of crevices for owls to roost and nest in. Now, of course, because of the skyscrapers and tons of buildings that has come up everywhere in the country, rapid urbanization, there are hardly few cities which still have traditional houses. And that is a kind of threat because they, unlike barn owls, not all owls can reside in these buildings or roost in these buildings. And the last one is a very tricky thing, and I would like to talk in my next slides about this: misguided compassion or knowledge gap. I like to call it toxic love. Now, one end of the spectrum, we have people who love owls, they want to help, and they don't know, there's a knowledge gap, they don't know whether the owl needs help or not. There have been so many instances where I've received calls from my friends who've told me that hey, there's an owl that's outside my window and it needs to be rescued. And upon further inquiry, we realized that the owl's just roosting there, it's just sleeping, minding its own business. But because we are so unaccustomed to seeing owls around us, that as soon as we spot an owl, we make it a big issue. We think it needs to be rescued, right? So most of the calls that are placed for rescue are actually false alarms. And then again, we have a bunch of people who really want to help so much that they end up handling injured owls that are actually injured. Let's say they have a fractured leg or wing, and you end up handling that bird without professional training, without any sort of guidance. As I said, owls are very, very prone to stress. More often than not, there have been cases where good intention of these citizens have led to deaths in the part of these owls. Again, a very important thing to remember is that, let's say, just 1 or 2 out of 10 owls that are rescued and treated actually survive and get a second chance at life. Right? And that's very unfortunate because in India now, there are very few organizations which actually pertains to or has the resources to rescue an owl and treat it like by the book properly. It has the human resources and a facility to take care of owls. And rescue isn't just, it doesn't stop at just rescuing, right? It has four major stages. You first rescue, then you need to treat the treatment, then rehabilitation comes, which is very important. You need to monitor and give a proper sort of peaceful environment for the owl to recover, because they're very prone to stress. And then comes release, the most important part of all. Until and unless any wildlife for that matter is released after rescue, your rescue mission is incomplete and it ends in failure. And more often than not, owls are, are not being able to deal with the stress, or because there's a lack of rehabilitation facilities, they end up mostly dying after, even after treatment. And that is very unfortunate because we are still in that nascent stage in India where we don't acknowledge the significance of urban wildlife rescues. Right? We don't have wildlife wings in every city or every state that's work is just to rescue and treat urban wildlife. Um, because of which I feel there are unsung heroes when it comes to individuals, professionally trained rescuers who do this job, who are professionally trained, who may be working with the forest department or some small organization or NGO. And I know so many such people who dedicate 20 or 18 hours out of 24 hours every day just rescuing wildlife and taking care and trying to make sure that they survive. So we definitely need more intervention at the policy level. We need more organizations. We need more funding. Right now, I would like to name there is ARRC in Bangalore, Avian and Reptile Rehabilitation Center, which is doing an amazing job. We have Rescue Pune. I think a lot of people still have heard about Rescue Pune. They're doing an amazing job. There is Raw Mumbai, there is Wildlife Rescue in New Delhi, and they really have a lot of facilities. Apart from that, there are a lot of small organizations who are also doing a wonderful job. But unfortunately, till the time we all sort of acknowledge and come together, it's a multi-agency sort of approach that you need. You cannot expect only forest department to do this. You cannot expect only citizens to do this, or NGOs or wildlife vets. Everybody needs to come together. Owls have also been moved up to Schedules 1 and 2 of the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act from the Schedule 4. Most of the owls were in Schedule 4. This means that now they are under more legal protection and there is stricter punishment. So we cannot go around handling owls or capturing them, or just keeping them as pets. It's just a reminder. And here is where you come in. I feel like citizens form a very, very important part in this story. Citizens are critically important, basically, in sort of reporting rescues and being the eyes on field. And without the intervention and help of these citizens, I don't think researchers like us would have understood or gotten to know so much about the threats that owls face. So here are a few heartwarming, and I'm so lucky to get these stories and interact with people who have done their very best to make sure that these owls survive. And citizens are the bridge between urban wildlife in need of help and trained professionals who can provide that sort of help. And there are just a few things that you can do if you want to make a difference as a citizen. First of all, you can try and learn more about your owl neighbors, as in we can just try and learn about the basic ecology of owls, maybe keep our eyes and ears open at night and see which owls share your backyards. Most importantly, we can play a good role in busting myths. I'm sure most of the people who are here, they don't believe in the superstitions, hopefully. And if that's the case, really would be very helpful to go around telling our family, friends, and kids, busting the superstitions, because we all need to be together in this, right? And this is the beginning. I think a great help would be to report these rescues in time, owls in need of rescues in time, on time, and also sort of reporting if you ever come across mishandling of an owl or an illegal capture of an owl. So these things are very important, and a very quick reminder that urbanization is irreversible. We cannot go back to how we were before. Trees have been cut. Now skyscrapers are going to just come up. There's a high chance that we will come across more owls than ever before. So here we sort of need to take a stand and ask ourselves, are we ready to be at least instill a healthy curiosity towards owls, so that can we take part in future conservation strategies and policies if we need to conserve owls in our cities? And I think before ending the talk, I would really love to share a heartwarming story. It's very close to my heart. It's about a small town called Kikinda in Serbia, and it's called the owl capital of the world now. But initially, what used to happen is 10,000 to 20,000 long-eared owls used to go there, and still do, and roost in the trees every winter when they're migrating from different parts of the world. And that is so unusual because that's not normal owl behavior. Owls are solitary creatures. So these owls end up, in one tree you see 200, 300 owls. And that is crazy. And that obviously drew a lot of scientists, researchers, birders, naturalists to this small town called Kikinda, where the people themselves were unaware. And they just refused to believe what the fuss was about. They didn't care much. And slowly, as time went by, and they saw that tourism really spiked up, and this is something that was catching a lot of attention, they started taking notice, they started taking interest, and that combined with a lot of hard work and efforts by a lot of researchers and community people, now the people of Kikinda are in absolute love with this phenomenon, and they want to continue conserving and making sure that these long-eared owls come here year after year. And it's like a stopover when we go for long journeys, probably because we don't know the exact reason. This is the best guess. Is we humans, we stop at inns and we refresh ourselves with food and rest. These owls might be doing the same thing, but it definitely makes for a very unusual phenomenon. And what is heartwarming to see is during Christmas, which is during winter, when this happens, it sort of aligns and overlaps with Christmas. Christmas is when we decorate everything with lights, right? I mean, you're supposed to celebrate it. But these folks, they have realized that that is not important as compared to protecting these owls. So what they have done is they have passed several guidelines among themselves that no lights will be hung up and the town square will not be decorated with lights, just so that they don't disturb these owls. And there are owl festivals happening where kids make cookies which are owl shaped, and they have these pamphlets and banners which sort of make the tourists aware of how important this small little square is. Now it's even declared as urban protected area. So it's a very heartwarming story. It's something I hope people can take away, because it's very special and gives you hope that someday, maybe, if required, other countries will follow suit, maybe in India. I would like to leave you with 3 books here. I can take a photo. It's Alfie and Me, Wesley and Owl. There are so many books on owls, but these 3 can be read by anybody, even if you have never read any book on wildlife before. These are such beautiful, written in simple language and heartwarming. They'll change the way you view owls forever. If you found anything I said interesting or it sparked a curiosity, I would request you to follow Urban Owl Network, our Instagram page, and there you'll find a link to also follow our newsletter Owl Post, which is not a very technical newsletter. It is meant for everybody. Um, and thank you. Please do write to us. We would love to hear owl stories, encounters, interactions, or concerns from all of you who are listening. And I'd be humbled if you could spare 5 to 10 minutes max, uh, take a photo of this QR code, and take part in our online questionnaire survey, where we are trying to understand the attitudes and perceptions of citizens all across India towards owls. So, thank you so much for listening, for your patience, and for giving me your time. Yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions, if any.
Firstly, Dipangini, thank you so much for that. It was very insightful. And I have to say, like, I wish something like this was part of the curriculum as well. This is not tough to understand. And I bet you really worked your way through, because these are technical things, sometimes very difficult to understand. But I like how you narrated the entire thing like a story for a layman like me who doesn't know much about owl apart from the little bit that we hear across books and media, which uh, a lot of it is not even true, as I'm coming to know from you now. So it's really nice, and it's really good to have you and this presentation. Something that I was wondering while you talked about how owls are so integrated into our culture, our religion, our history, even literature. I was just wondering, there is so much of cultural belief and superstitions around this one creature. Is Wasn't that like hard to shatter? Like, I would assume it's difficult in general, not just in respect to owls, but like in general, superstitions are hard to shatter, right? And when you're advocating for another being altogether, one that cannot speak for itself, how has your journey been in this context?
Wow, thanks, Ananya. That's quite a complicated question, one that I'm trying to answer every day now. So I'd just like to say that most of my research is focused in urban areas. So when I started my research, my first thought was that how difficult can it be to talk to urban folks and find out what they think about owls, because I thought it's more or less going to be similar, because I saw urban folks as, and it was again a mistake. I used to think that we are educated people will obviously not have these beliefs and superstitions. We'll find those mostly in rural areas. But
Hmm.
how wrong I was! I mean, it's unbelievable, because each city, each group of people, they have their own very deep rooted notions about owls. And here I would like to, I think, because I've been reflecting and realizing that oral storytelling is something that has been a part of our culture since the dawn of time, right? And oral storytelling is, it's not something that will go away. It's very deep rooted. It stays with us. We hear these stories by our parents, grandparents, when we are kids especially, and they'll stick to us. We may not have the understanding back then to sort of differentiate whether it's logical or illogical. It just stays with you. And then you have these, let's say, lived experiences where you come across owls and you form your own perceptions, your own attitudes towards these birds, right? And here's the interesting part about um, perceptions towards owls. Once you have a negative perception, let's say, that doesn't go away if a positive perception comes. Similarly, if you have a positive perception towards owls, as in you've grown up believing that they are vahanas of goddess Lakshmi, so they're very good and they're very pure and all of that. And then let's say you've had a very scary encounter that sort of got imprinted in your head, and then a lot of your family members said that, oh hey, this is a very scary thing, it's owls are like messengers of the dead or whatever. That will get embedded in your head, and that will coexist with the belief that you've had about some owls being there. being vahanas and lucky omens. So they are all existing side by side, is what I've realized. For example, there's this very educated person. When I say educated person, I mean like probably like literate, educated, professor. Kind of, that person said that, see, I don't believe in all of these things, but how do you explain that a person has died within 48 hours, that this owl has called? I found it fascinating because, like, you are choosing to believe that, right? You're choosing to believe that, and it's so complicated. It's very layered. So I don't think I have a way or a solution. I'm just so fascinated. What I try to do every day is just document all of this, compare all of this, figure out what all of this means, and maybe years later we can come up with something, which is why busting myths is very important. Some superstitions that directly harm owls, like the trafficking, the capture, and all of that, that definitely needs a lot of outreach and immediate sort of, strict action. And of course, teaching kids. So I hope that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we wrap up this live, I have to ask you before I let you go. Let's say there you get an opportunity to talk to an owl. Miss Ray, which owl would you choose and what would you say?
Oh wow, that can never come to me on the spot. But I do have a few favorites. I can tell you, I am in absolute love with the barn owl, and also because I see it from where I live, and I've seen it growing up. What I'm going to say, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to probably just what right now do. I'm just going to sit and probably hear it call out. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean that it's my favorite. I also love the brown hawk owl and the spotted owl and all of. I actually love all the owls, so I would rather not choose a favorite. But the barn owl is very close to my heart.
Wonderful. It's great listening to you, talking to you. And my takeaway, personal takeaway, has probably is that owls are not just about birds. It's about how our stories shape their survival. And that's about it. Devangini, thank you so much for joining us and getting us all those insights and telling us so much, bursting myths, as you said, and informing the misinformed people. Thank you. It's been lovely to
Thank you
speak
so
to you.
much. Thank you so much.